The day my grandmother died, she would visit me in a dream. Visitations are a common belief that when our loved ones pass, they visit us or leave signs. She entered my room and gave me the biggest hug with the hugest smile, and she looked like she did when I was a child, like a glamorous day in spring. There was a part of me that knew she had died just because of being raised in the spiritual world. Yet there was another part of me that refused, and no tarot confirmation can make me believe the woman who always survives somehow passed away. It would be 2 months until I realized my grandmother passed, and it would be a chaotic epiphany. I asked my friend to pull some tarots and asked her to figure out why I always got the death card whenever I pulled for me. She said out loud, "It has to do with your grandma." I decided after 10 months of not talking to my mother to call her. In my head, my grandmother was not picking up because she had her novelas up to volume 1000. But in my heart, there was a darker truth I was avoiding. My mother broke down. She passed 2 months ago. I was sad, and suddenly I felt a burst of peace, not simply because I had the truth, but I could let myself feel her more fully in a new form. That woman who was so happy and with God was with me all along, and my pain at not being able to touch her again shrouded that she could still hold me. I told my mother that in the dream her messages were to forgive, love God, and embrace life, to chase our dreams. But unfortunately, my mother would meet another version of her in her dreams. I like to call that version LinkedIn Grandma. "What?" I said, asking her to repeat. She said, "You are very arrogant in work interviews and that you need to be extra kind and small so you can get hired. Also, do not do tarots every day and that you will regret not talking to me when I die." My mother declared with a seething undertone. I instantly cried. The version of my grandmother who visited me was at peace and proud of our bond, our growth, even amidst pain. Yet my mother had met a version that doubted my interviewing skills, despite honestly not having a work interview in years. While I was applying, I was running as a freelancer off of old clients that liked me and their word of mouth. Yet to my grandmother, new people would find me an egomaniac, ready and willing to pull a tarot card mid-interview. I was so disappointed and gutted, because even in the highest platform of heaven, somehow the women in my life found a way to judge me and distance me from God. She didn't say anything about heaven, Mom. She said it's very blue. Blue? I sighed. What is she, in a Pantone, a color block? Just one giant Lego? She also said she suffered a lot as she lived. I was gutted, and I began to cry again. Even heaven still had a note of earthly judgment and darkness. The woman that I had sent off to peace in my mother's head was still grieving. All right, let's heal. Let's discuss. So, when my grandmother died, the day she died, she opened my bedroom door like I was dreaming. And I was at my table, and I had a lit candle on, and the room was dark, actually. And she comes in with the biggest smile, and and I ran to her. I was like, "Grandma!" And I gave her, because my mother ruined my last few months with my grandma. And it was because my mother always said, "One day you're not going to talk to me." And I would be like, "Oh, no, 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 no." It's almost like she manifested the ending of our relationship, because I never in a million years would have thought I would not be speaking to my mother. But she got so abusive and so cruel. I had to, just for my physical health, not just my mental. Like, I felt like I was getting stress, heart attacks, panic attacks. And I told my mother, as she would say, "Just make sure you keep on talking to your grandma if we never talk." And I said, "Well, just tell her that we're talking, because she's going to bring it up." And it was so immediate. All my grandmother could talk about when I would talk to her was about how I had stopped talking to my mother. She became obsessed with it. And I hated it, because me and my grandmother would talk about novelas, and I would beg her to tell me stories of when she was young, and she'd be like, "One day." And I felt like these long calls with this woman that loved to chat as much as me became short because going no contact with your family is really, really hard. My inner child longs to be held by my mom and is trying to accept that my mother really didn't hold me. I held her. And part of why our relationship died was because I realized if I keep on holding her, I'll never hold me. Let me start holding me. Let me see if she comes to hold me. And she didn't. And she got upset and she got vindictive. And my mother, when I called her to see about my grandmother's passing, she broke down and she was like, there was a priest there and I called your Aunt Neela and and they hadn't spoken for a decade, but they had this beautiful 2-hour conversation. And I was like, on one hand, I don't think I fully processed that I was talking about my grandmother's passing. So I was taking in the story like, oh, wow, I'm so glad that, they had that reconciliation and that my grandmother had a priest. And she was like, your grandmother saw her brother and she said, I see Jesus. And I was like, wow. And she was like, 50 people were there. Like everybody came. I even called all my high school friends and they showed up and I kept on. And then there was this moment of, nobody called me. Not one person texted me or emailed me. And my mother rewrote it as, well, because you were ignoring me. I thought you knew, but you didn't want to be a part of it. And I didn't, I almost froze because my grandmother always said I had 2 daughters. And I was her second daughter. And that kind of bothered my mom. Like she liked it and she didn't because my mother was very competitive with me. She liked that her friends liked me, but feared that they liked me more. We always had this weird relationship. And I think in many ways, my mother needed to be the center of attention for her mom's passing. And in the dream, my grandmother had messages, but the dream ended with me asking, Grandma, did you pass away? And then she disappeared and I woke up. And there was a part of me that I understood that those are how visitation dreams happen. Like if you see them younger and healthier and they're giving you messages of like world peace, it's pretty clear they might have passed away. But there was a part of me that I went no contact with my mother because of how abusive she was towards me, but I never went no contact with my grandma. And there was a part of me that thought if I worked really, really hard this year and stabilized myself emotionally, mentally, and financially, I was going to buy a secret ticket to Puerto Rico and not tell her and go hug her. And so she wouldn't invite my mom and it could just be us. And it was this weird conversation of just my mother feeling really sad that she lost her mom and really proud for the exit that she gave her, and completely isolating the fact that I slept with my grandmother and we shared a room till I was like 16. We didn't have a lot of money. I'll admit I rubbed her feet when she had pain. When I love people, I am very touchy. If you get sick, I will hold your vomit bag. Like I'm not the type of person to not show up for you when you are sick, when you are down, when you are depressed. My grandmother called me when she was sad to feel uplifted. She didn't call my mom because that just wasn't how my mom is not an empowerer unless to her friends. And the fact that all her friends were invited to her funeral, as if it was my mom reliving her prom, really, really upset me. And something about the different versions of our visitation made me realize that in many ways I may not want my mom because she abuses me, but my mom doesn't even want to abuse me anymore. Like, she just doesn't want me. And it was sad that she kind of used my grandmother as a way to project this vision of me that just doesn't exist, you know? Oh, you're so arrogant in interviews. I haven't had an interview in years, if I'm going to be honest. I've tried and I've applied, but it's hard out there. And then, you know, when you're a freelancer, you're always working, and one client connects you to another and another. And it's a freelance world, honestly. And don't do tarots every day. And it's like, I pull, you know, like the empowerment ones, like you gotta love you. And it just felt like, for a woman that passed away, she was so dark. Like, I'm in heaven, but I suffered so much in life. It's like, oh God, why are we bringing that up? Tell me about heaven. Oh, it's very blue. That's it. It's just a solid color, you know? And maybe my mother didn't tell me everything. Maybe my mother, maybe my mother didn't even see my grandmother. I don't know. Because in the same way, she could say I wasn't visited. I maybe had a delusion. I maybe had a secret dark ghost acting like, you know, like, I just felt that we had reached a point in the relationship where we were never going to see each other with grace. And I had to accept that I may want to give my mother peace, but because she doesn't like me, she will feel no peace with me. And there's something to that dynamic where I have to almost be accountable. Like, if this person is a really good person to their friends, but horrible to you, in a way, you're sabotaging their potential growth to be better. Like my mother, I want her to just live the rest of her life with her friends, traveling, and even if she curses me every day and says I'm a horrible daughter and that she was my victim, I almost find peace in just like, my mother defined love by how people pitied her. I define love by how people have peace with me, if that makes sense. Like, I just want to chill with you. I want to talk with you and cuddle you. And that was the type of love my grandmother had with me. And she wasn't perfect. She could be mean and she could be difficult, but she had a lot of traumas. And I admired how hard she worked to be good to herself and others. Like, that woman had red lipstick every day. She did not fail. And there was a part of me that really did feel, because our bond was so life-giving, that distancing myself would cut her health in many ways. And I have to process that guilt because I need to get away from my mother. I need to get away from my family, and I need to get away from people that somehow will use the death of a great woman to teach a lesson. A lesson on interview skills, perhaps. But it was just really dark. And one thing that my family always did was kind of turn God into a little bit mean. It wasn't just that my grandmother suddenly was checking my CV and how I presented my resume. It was that I really, because she had such a suffered life, I wanted to believe that she went to heaven. She's like, and she didn't even mention it anymore. She was like, you know what? I'm so happy. I have joy in my heart. Everything's good. Like, it gets better. Just believe in you. And I don't think it's by chance that the visitation I had with her was exactly like that. And my mother's visitation was kind of, I suffered, but I love you. Let go of the past and forgive your daughter for not honoring you. Like, okay. If and all this was happening under the color blue. But I think at the end of the day, what that whole situation taught me and is teaching me is that I really I let go of these people, but they let go of me, or they didn't let me in. And that's so dark for me to accept and grieve because, first of all, my grandma and my mom were my world. So it got really, really abusive on my mother's end for me to walk away because I would have given my life for that woman. The problem is she kind of wanted me to, and it wasn't necessary. And I have to process that she isolated me from my other moms passing. And she did it with intent. And even if she didn't do it with intent, so much of our relationship was my mother putting me last. My mother putting her own worth before mine and still being insecure. Because that's the thing. If you were confident, I wouldn't... how do I say this? To be self-centered and insecure will inevitably make you cruel and diabolical. And my mother made it a point to always kind of put her feelings and put her decisions and put what she thought before me. And in the end, it's almost like it became automatic to forget me. Like automatic to not consider my feelings. Automatic to not at the very least both of us share what we are, our thoughts. And it's been tricky maneuvering that. It really, really has, because I adored my grandmother. And I really thought my mother loved me. Not just loved how I loved her. And this was a huge act of unlove. So check out daddyrecovery.com. Actually, check out DeAndreReviewsItAll.com. Check out Jardín on all music platforms, and please follow.